both good. Hopefully better than what the cartoon we played we showed in the last episode, which was the internet is darkness.
Yes, we are on a mission to make the internet a happy place. What are the odds of us succeeding?
Tonight, it's 50-50.
Yes. Our little corner 50, of the internet, maybe.
Yeah. There are a lot of corners right now. My mom is like doing paint classes. There's travel classes. There's any kind of meeting group, whatever there's probably a Matchbox meeting group on Zoom right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, matchbook meeting, maybe?
Yeah, matchbook meeting. Thank you.
Maybe a matchbook meeting?
Or you could start one, Todd.
I should. Go through
What's that one? Oh, that's right. You collect those. I remember that from the MRE.
I don't actively collect them, but I saved my collection from childhood. And so it's a hoot to go through. You probably remember all these. Steak Company. Oh, I think I've been there.
Well, you make me nervous with that fireplace going in the background, even though it's virtual. I just expect you.
I want to do that. I'd love to. I need to convince my wife that I get to hang a TV back here or something.
Yeah.
Well, I could deliver one to you.
I have one over there, but
then
I have to move everything.
Extra TV.
All right, I'm going to start this music. We can see how it sounds.
All right.
Thank you, Brad. Everybody, how are y'all doing tonight? My name is Sean. I am the host of this new program through the Veterans Breakfast Club, Generation 9/11 at 20. Super excited that this is the first episode of this new series, and just have to take a quick second right at the beginning to thank Todd for bringing me into the VBC family, but for also entrusting me with my own show. So we're going to see how this goes. Super honored to be a part of this. This is going to be a series that's going to run throughout the year and maybe longer, that we're going to focus on post 9/11 veterans, but also veterans who were in service through 9/11, as evidenced by our guest tonight, Brad Washabaugh, who was in through Desert Storm and in through 9/11. And we'll get to Brad in a few minutes. But I want to start off here with a few announcements. I'm going to share my screen here. We got our beautiful new logo. If this is the first time you're joining us this week, this was the start of, what is this, Todd, VBC 3.0?
VBC 3.0. That's what we're calling it.
3.0. And I definitely will not forget to introduce both Todd DiPastino, the Executive Director of Veterans Breakfast Club. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Yeah, this is exciting.
Wonderful. And Ellie DiPastino, media producer. She is working the back end. Ellie, how's it going?
Doing pretty well. There's a lot of snow coming down here in Chicago, so I'm glad to be indoors.
Nice. Well, as you can maybe notice by our new logo, we ditched all caps. We think that we love the new feel of this. I feel it's like a bit friendlier, a bit more welcoming. We're highlighting that VBC. Many people know us as VBC. When you talk to your friends, you say, "Did you see VBC?" So this is a exciting thing for us to roll out this week with all of our new programming, and I will definitely talk about all that in just a second. But tonight, Generation 9/11, this graphic made by Ellie, beautiful work, depicting some of the highlights from the last 20 years. Obviously, the Saddam statue coming down. But here's our new schedule. If you haven't joined us this week, next week we have the same schedule. Mondays, 7 p.m., VBC Happy Hour. That's hosted by the one and only Todd DiPastino. Todd, what are we talking about next Monday?
We're going to continue our discussion with veterans of Field and Desert Storm. We left a lot of stories on the table tonight. We want to bring all those veterans back. Anybody who served in the military in 1991 or 1990 and 91 would love to have you on. So if you spend, please come on Monday night at 7, or if you know somebody who served then. We didn't get any Navy stories. We need Navy stories from Desert Storm. So that's what we'll be focusing on.
Focus on some Navy. So yeah, 30 years Desert Storm. Wednesday is our Veterans Breakfast Club, the homage to our title. 9 a.m. We are here having coffee, having breakfast. It's a little bit more loose conversation Wednesday mornings. It's always a good time to just get together, chat, catch up on some things. Some really fun conversation this past week, yesterday, and another program hosted by I believe
Pappy.
Yeah, Deck Pappy. That's who is Deck Pappy? I know.
Deck
Do you know?
Pappy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's put it in the. If anybody knows who Poop Deck Pappy was, put it in the chat.
Oh.
Poop Deck Pappy. Poop. I see. I can't even say it. Didn't do my vocal warm up
Zoom is
beforehand.
black and white. Popeye's dad. That's exactly it.
Popeye's dad. Excellent. And I believe is Glenn Flickinger. I believe I saw him sign in. He is going to be hosting our Greatest Generation Live. That's going to be Tuesday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. I don't know why there's an S there, but I put one there because that's, what I do. But Glenn, I didn't know if you wanted to maybe say a few words about the upcoming Greatest Generation Live. Right now, it's one time per month, but looking forward to the first episode. I don't know if we have Glenn. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Glenn. There we go.
How's that?
That's great.
Yeah, sure. I'm absolutely thrilled to be doing this, to be asked by Todd and you, and to be trusted, to develop this program. So I'm really looking forward to it. I started working in earnest with Todd and you, Sean, as you know, on what the programs are going to be. I've had 2 or 3 discussions this past week with one veteran and a couple of authors about lining them up for the first 2 or 3 programs. The one for February 23rd, potentially, I don't have it 100% confirmed yet, is going to be a Lieutenant Colonel Bud Anderson, who was a P-51 pilot in England and Europe during World War II. So we're still working on getting that confirmed, but it's a fascinating man, a fascinating story.
That's fantastic. Looking forward to it. Can't wait for it. And all the future Greatest Generation Lives. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to expand our hosting duties. So thank you, Glenn. And also, I'm just going to throw up a big old scuttlebutt up here onto the screen. That is our podcast. It's released every Monday. I host that as well. We just had a really wonderful conversation today. We usually record it on Thursdays. I recorded today with Ryan All and Haya Eason. I believe you are here tonight, and Becky Nyron. We had an interesting conversation about the military-civilian divide. It's something that we try to bring up consistently in the scuttlebutt. It's a way for us to help define it, figure out ways that we can work on that. It was, Becky's a Gold Star wife, me being a non-veteran, and Haya and Ryan, Marines and Army respectively, is a really wonderful chance for us to all get together and just sort of talk through some talking points about that divide. But that'll be released on Monday. Ellie does an incredible job releasing this on YouTube as a really great edited together, visually interesting piece. So if you have time on Mondays or anytime during the week, check us out on the Scuttlebutt. And I do want to highlight, because this just came to us this week, is Henry Shepke or Shopke. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that right.
Shepke.
Shepke. Is he here with us?
He is.
Yeah,
Henry. Hey, how you doing, man?
doing good.
Good. So we got a stamp drive going for you. Is that right?
Yeah.
So your goal is to send thank you notes to 500 World War II veterans in 2021.
Yeah. It's a big endeavor, but yeah.
How many have you sent so far?
Well, I sent out like a big batch in like January, so I think I have like 40 something.
Okay. That's a good start. That puts you on pace.
Yeah.
All right. So believe it, we are doing a stamp drive for him. So if you are able to send him 1 stamp, 10 stamps, a roll of stamps, that's going to cost him a lot to be able to get all of these thank you notes out. So we will put his address in the chat. And, if you're able to help Henry out, that would be wonderful. Henry, thank you so much for joining me for my first episode of Generation 9/11. I do actually want to ask you some questions as we get into this program, because you're the youngest one here in the room. You weren't alive during 9/11, but it's interesting to me that this next generation, you probably talked to your parents about it, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, my parents have talked to me about, where they were and stuff. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So we'll get to that eventually. And thank you for being here. So I also wanted to take some time today for any COVID updates. I think that's important in our programming, that we let everybody know if there's any updates at the VA or anything that people need to chime in on. If you want to raise your hand, or Todd, if you want to speak to it. I know that you've been getting a lot of messages about this. Just want to make sure that everybody has the most up-to-date information possible.
Yes, I know that we have Larry Gamrett. We talk about his experiences, John DeLallo about his. It's just been so interesting to me to hear how the VA kind of pipeline of vaccines seems completely separate from the civilian pipeline. And the VA has a lot of vaccines. And it seems like if you want to be vaccinated, you can be, really, whether you're 65 and older or not. John DeLallo, you have your hand up. I know you had an experience recently, right?
And a great experience, Todd. It really was. I went down to the VA and I avoided the rush that they had down there on the weekends. So I went down on the 19th, which was a Tuesday. Walked in like I owned the place. I just asked, "Where's the COVID vaccines?" They go, "Over there." All they ask you for is your last name, last 4, and your birthday. And I didn't get there till 10:30 in the morning. And here it turns out that I was number 17 in line, which,
oh, wow.
I mean, it's just amazing. And I go in there on the 9th, Tuesday coming, to get my second and final dose of the Pfizer vaccine.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I've heard that the VA has had their stuff together with this rollout, and interestingly enough, the public doesn't have their stuff together. So it's really nice to see.
Yeah. Well, one real quick aside, and then I'm going to mute myself again. I sent an email to Sean, either to you or to Todd, I can't remember which, with a detailed, who can get into the Veterans Administration healthcare system. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out, if you're a veteran and you've got an honorable discharge, you can pretty much get into, or enroll rather, regardless of income and what have you, in the VA healthcare system. And the only thing that's important to note is they do a means test. And so if you're working for a living and making a decent buck, you can expect to have a copay if you seek care. But my best understanding is it doesn't cost you a dime to enroll. Mm-hmm. And again, I sent that detailed information on enrolling. I sent it either to you or to Todd maybe a couple hours ago. So
yes, you sent it to me. I do have it.
Oh, you got it. All right, good. And again, it's worth pointing out to people. Well, I can't qualify for VA healthcare. I make too much money. No, that's incorrect.
Bob, you have your finger up.
Yeah. Hey, John, I think all COVID vaccinations are free across the United States. So how can a VA bill for them?
Yes, that's true. That no one has to pay for a COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay.
And if anybody tries to get information from you, credit cards, so on and so forth, no, don't give them that information. Over the phone, I'm saying, particularly if they're telling you, hey, pay me $100 and I'll get you a guaranteed spot in the line.
Corky says in the chat, do you have to be registered with the VA to receive the shot?
Yes,
absolutely. You must be in the VA healthcare system.
Great.
But
but they'll sign you up on the spot. I mean, they'll enroll you and then give you the shot on the spot.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I can't understand why any veteran upon discharge, well, I do understand why. But I mean, I retired and pretty much what I got, I talked to Sean earlier, pretty much what I got was have a great retirement. You would have thought that somebody would have sat me down and said, hey, you qualify for all this wonderful stuff. Just get down to the VA and register. And I fell into it quite accidentally. And thank God I am in the system.
That's great.
Hey, Todd Cork, did you say they'll register you on the spot?
Yes.
They will. My understanding is, and Leo West might chime in on this. He has his hand up. My understanding is, yes, they are registering people on the spot, as you're waiting in line, and then you get the shot. Mm-hmm. Leo.
Hey, well, that changes the a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, Leo, if you want to mute. Let's see. You're muted there, Leo, and then Jimmy Jones.
Yeah, I'll ask you to unmute Leo. There you go.
Okay. I forget that every time. I called them when I first heard about these on the Vets Breakfast Club, and they told me that I had to enroll. So they sent me the information. I enrolled, and they called me back, gave me an appointment, and I came in and got the shot yesterday, and it was just very quick and no problems at all. But I don't know about the registering on site. I mean, because they told me no, that I had to be registered before I could come in. So that was the way they did it for me. But it might be that way now.
Thank you, Leo. Jimmy.
Yeah, my wife took me out to the VA last Saturday, and when you walk in there, they actually have two lines. They have a line for the people that need to register, and they also have a line for people that already registered with the VA, which that line was a lot shorter. So I wasn't in there 20 minutes, and they gave me a shot, and you have to sit there for 5 minutes. They won't let you go until they want to say there's no reaction, and then they'll give you an appointment for the second shot, which is mine, is February 17th. Well, it's really funny. My wife was standing there, and they asked her if she wanted a shot, and she said, "Oh no, I'm not a veteran." She said, "Well, you're a dependent," and she said, "Well, I can't get a shot because I already got mine at Allegheny General Hospital because that's where she works." So that was funny to even ask her if she wanted a shot or not.
That's good. They're definitely they have to get rid of them as soon as it opens. They got to be able to do it. So if they have someone to stick an arm, they're going to do that.
My brother Larry called me because I went out there the first Saturday that they had walk-ins, and it was a zoo. There had to have been thousands of veterans standing in line. I mean, it just wasn't organized. My wife said, you got to get out of here. Nobody's practicing social distancing or anything like that, because they had to, like, in boot camp, toe the hill almost. And so we left. And then a week later, my brother Larry Lawrence, I don't think he's here tonight, but he calls me and says, Jim, I just had a friend that went out to the VA and got his shot. He says, there's nobody out there, and they want people to come because they have all this vaccine out. And from what I understand, whatever they don't use, they have to throw away. Is that true?
Yeah. That's what we know is true. Baltimore Ben, I'm not sure if
I
they
might
get
try
cookie.
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they get cookie or juice. Maybe both. You might get a nice glass of milk with your shot.
Not mine. I didn't.
Leo did not. Leo needed to go to the nicer place to get the cookie. But yeah, I think it's important for our programming as we get everybody together to get some interesting or to get some news out about COVID and their experiences. I want to pop to Leadership Pittsburgh is here tonight. Mary Hamblett is with us for a cool announcement. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. There we go. It's a little official, right? Mary, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
And thanks for popping up that picture. So
It's the
thanks to
professional
Sean.
one.
I
Professional
know,
one.
I see that. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't even think to do that. So thank you. And thanks to Todd and everybody at VBC for having us here tonight and for, of course, all the work that you do. It's really, truly wonderful. So just a quick announcement. My name's Marie Hamblett. I'm the program director with Leadership Pittsburgh, Inc. We are a small nonprofit here in the region. We've been around for about 37 years. Our mission is to strengthen regional leadership through programs, partnerships, and connections. And one of those programs that we have is called Community Leadership Course for Veterans, otherwise known as CLCV. And it's aimed at leveraging the skills and experiences of post 9/11 veterans by exposing them to new leadership networks and opportunities for service to the Southwestern Pennsylvania region and community. Participants have an opportunity to meet with regional business and community leaders, establish a greater understanding of sort of the business and nonprofit sector and different issues and trends that are happening here in the region, and then to sort of utilize their leadership skills to accomplish a community impact project for a nonprofit. We're currently recruiting for CLCV 8, the 8th cohort. And the application deadline is April 30th. The class is going to run July to November. We meet about every other week. Applications are available on our website. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. I'll throw my name and our website and my number in the chat in just a moment. And so if you are a post 9/11 veteran, or if you know a post 9/11 veteran, we're currently recruiting, and I appreciate Sean and Todd giving me a minute to kind of do a shout out about it. So thanks so much.
Of course. And only a couple more announcements here. If you have not received it, I'm sure you will very soon. Our new VBC magazine, this is what we've turned our VBC newsletter into, is out in the mail. So hopefully you all have received it. It's filled with stories, updates on our new scheduled programming. We also pulled some of our interview with the Black veterans on our Black Veteran Night to be able to speak and give some of the stories in the magazine. So we're also we're going to be always looking for veterans to come and tell their story. So there's a call to action in there. But if you get it and you'd like to give us a note, drop us a note about what you think about it. We'd love to hear from you. And that goes for all of our programs, especially tonight as well. And so the last segment that I have before we get to Brad is something that I want to do each week here. Being a part of this generation, and this is sort of my generation's war, I want to do a 9/11 timeline. This sort of gives us some context of the last 20 years of the war on terror, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. Obviously, with this being the very first episode of Generation 9/11, I want to run over sort of the events of the day of 9/11, but I don't need to show any videos. I think that we've sort of had all of those images a bit seared into our memory. So I want to just let everyone know that I'm not going to be showing any video or anything as a part of this. It's just an idea of the timing of that day. And then as we start to go into each week, I want to start opening up that into what happened the week later, what happened prior to 9/11 to lead us to that. How did we get involved in Afghanistan? What were the operations? I think a lot of people know that we're at war, but they don't know the specifics. So I think that there's opportunity here to at least touch on some of the highlights or the points of what's going on or what has happened in the last 20 years. It probably might take me a couple years to do this. So hopefully Todd has this program on the schedule for a while. But a real quick overview here of that day and the timing of what happened, because as we talk to Brad, we're going to understand a bit more about, as he was at the Pentagon, the timing of his day. And as we talk to veterans throughout this program, I think a main question that we're going to come back to is, where were you on that day? And everybody remembers, and I'm interested in hearing everyone's story, not just post 9/11 veterans, about where they were on 9/11. But I think this is probably the main program where we're actually just going to focus on that day specifically. So one thing that I do want to mention is that September 9th, 2001, a couple days right before 2001, because I feel like we're going to get to this eventually, is that when Ahmad Shah Massoud, the leader of the United Islamic Front, for the salvation of Afghanistan or the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan. He was assassinated at the instigation of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And Massoud played a leading role driving the Soviets out of Afghanistan, earning him the nickname the Lion of Panjshir. So that was something that happened in the lead up. It's definitely a part of a lot of the research as you look into the timeline of 9/11. But as you get into the actual day, we have 8:46 in the morning, Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower. At 9:02, Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower. At 9:37, Flight 77 crashed into the west side of the Pentagon. 9:45, the US airspace is shut down. Transport Canada orders a complete close down of Canadian airspace. 9:59, the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed. At 10:03, Flight 93 crashed 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh in Somerset County. There's a wonderful memorial to them down there if you've never been able to visit that. The 9/11 Commission believed that flight's target was either the Capitol building or the White House in DC. At 10:28, the North Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed. At 10:50, 5 stories of part of the Pentagon collapsed due to the fire. 10:53, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld ordered the U.S. military placed at DEFCON 3. At 1:04, later into the afternoon, the President Bush put the U.S. military on high alert worldwide, known as Force Protection Condition Delta. And that's the day in a nutshell. 2,977 lives were lost. And that in comparison to Pearl Harbor was 2,403. So that sort of gives some context to that day. But what I'd like to do now is highlight our guest for tonight, and that is Brad Washabaugh. Brad, thank you so much for joining us and joining me for this first program.
Well, thank you, Sean. Good to be here.
Definitely. And you were just with us on Monday night talking about Desert Storm. And I had some questions about Desert Storm that I'd like to just review here and then as we get towards 9/11, some questions as we get towards that day as well. Sure. But the main one that sort of popped into my head first was how was it Johnson submitted their single dose vaccine. How was it to be deployed with a family? And I don't know if I've ever asked anybody that.
Well, deployments are always challenging for families. And when there's a threat of war, it just makes that much more difficult. In my case, I was already deployed for just about 6 months to Okinawa on a unit deployment program. And we got the word that we were going to go to Saudi Arabia for Desert Storm. And that was it was right around Christmas time is when we got the word. So a lot of families, of course, missed Christmas with their loved ones, and a few wives flew over. I was stationed in 29 Palms, California, and a few wives flew over to Okinawa, Japan to spend time with their families. My wife did come over. It was a special time to go to church and reflect. I knew we were going to combat. I didn't know whether I'd survive or not. And so those few days that I was able to spend with my wife were very special. But back then the internet and the news did not come instantaneously, so there was a gap. There was a lot of misinformation, which always makes it tough for families. But you pull together and you do your best you can and support each other and make it through. But it is a difficult time for families to go through deployments and of course combat operations.
And you were dealing with a lot of the minefields over there, correct?
Yes. In fact, we were the first unit to cross the border into Kuwait. We were the first military organization to go into Kuwait on the ground. Of course, the air war was going, but when they decided to put the ground forces in, they had us go into Kuwait 2 days before the actual ground war started. And the idea for us was to conduct an infiltration attack through the minefields to get up to the first major minefield and find a way for the armored force to punch through. And it was a very risky operation. Anytime you have a passage of lines with an armored force going through dismounted infantry, there is a high chance of mistakes. And we did have a mistake. We had that force came up behind us to pass through. Once we found a gap, they mistook us for enemy and they fired upon us. And as you may recall, Desert Storm was a heavy firepower war, but there were 23% of the casualties were due to friendly fire. 35 Americans lost their lives at the hands of other Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And that had an impact on our unit, and it had an impact on me after the war. When I was assigned to school for 2 years, I wrote a paper on friendly fire and just kind of outlined what can be done. You know, it isn't just a price of doing business in warfare. There are things that can be done. And we lost a young Marine, Christian Porter, due to friendly fire. And I was able to publish an article in the Marine Corps Gazette about that incident. And I think the title was Call to Action. And my plea was that we don't just forget about it when the memory of warfare was so fresh, that you know, there are things we can do through situational awareness and training and technology to help lessen the chance of friendly fire. But when you do take a casualty, and we had 2 killed and 14 wounded with 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. I was with Task Force Grizzly, 1st Marine Division. And if you ever see that movie Jarhead, the first one, it is about a battalion that was close to us during the war. They have a lot of the pictures right, but the rest of it is just pure Hollywood garbage, you know.
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of hurry up and wait, if I remember from that movie.
Yeah, I think during Desert Shield it was, but you know, when we got deployed, we arrived in Saudi Arabia in January, and they knew exactly what they wanted to do with us, and that
Mm-hmm.
would get us ready to start walking in the desert and you know, walk up to the border and do this infiltration attack. So we actually spent very little time in base camp. In fact, we started walking north and training for this mission about how we would infiltrate through minefields as we went. And so we had a very good plan going into it. But like all good plans, you know, the fog of war comes into it. And our fog was returning planes from bombing, dropped their bombs on the minefield very close to where we were. And I remember a fuel air explosive bomb going off as I was talking to the battalion commander at night. And the concussion just blew me back in a backward somersault. I mean, it was that powerful. And you know, so we had to change our plans. We went up in daylight and blasted the heck out of the Iraqis in daylight all day. And at the very end of the day, a few surrendered. We had them walk through the minefield. We interrogated them on the spot, and they said, well, we tell you where the other minefield is, but we were sealed in, so good luck. And so we were in between 2 minefields with oil fires coming. And he said, oh, by the way, there's another Iraqi company to our left, and the commander over there is a bit of a hard-nosed guy. I don't think he's going to surrender.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the middle of the night, we got a report that there were people coming. You know, our scouts picked up movement, and we saw 100 or so figures coming to us in the dark. I asked what kind of formation they were in. It was partially column, partially skirmish. We couldn't tell whether they were surrendering or attacking. And the battalion commander, I made a decision to call in a dual purpose ICM artillery mission, which is where artillery round burst in the air and bomblets come down on the ground. And it was a spectacular display, but every one of those souls that we saw standing were gone. So there was over 100 Iraqi soldiers just gone due to that mission.
You had mentioned before we started recording tonight that in that friendly fire incident, there was a bit of fear that you felt, and can you recount that description? It was an interesting description of how your body sort of reacted to it.
Well, it was tough because the unit coming up behind us mistook us for enemy, and they started firing tank rounds and 50 caliber rounds in our position. So we had bullets impacting all around us. And at the same time, the enemy saw what was going on, so they fired upon us. And the enemy uses green tracer rounds. We use red, and these bullets were coming in right amongst all the Marines in the position, kicking up sand. My job was to get on the radio and stop this fire as fast as I could. And I'd gotten as low as I could in the sand. I think my buttons were getting in the way. It was that I had to stand up and get to the Humvee where the radios were to call ceasefire. And in that moment, with things going around your head, I just felt like my head was a watermelon, and the next thing was going to explode. Some bullets impacted the Humvee, and I was able to get to the radio, and it seemed like forever before the fire ceased. And we were able to, I started getting reports from the field, and we had a report of a casualty.
He might have lost it. Who knows?
Had a report of a casualty, and the battalion commander went down to where this Marine was hit, Lance Corporal Christian Porter, and he came back, and his face was ashen. It was pale. His hands were shaking, and that was our first casualty. And it was something that stayed with us and stayed with me. And the oil fires are so bad, we couldn't medevac his body. So we had to put it in a bag and keep him there for 2 or 3 days in the back of a truck. And so that, was a pretty steep price to pay at that time, at a crucial moment. That friendly fire has a disproportionate effect on the unit that it takes, because you lose confidence in the people around you. And at that time, desert warfare is very tough for visibility and things like that.
I'm going to circle back to that feeling a little bit later. And I also want to leave some of your Desert Storm story for Todd for Monday. So I'm going to move on from Desert Storm, and we go into sort of a time of what we thought was peace. And I thought that it would be interesting to sort of get an idea of like what your life in the military was like as we get to 9/11. There was this time of there really wasn't a large conflict, right?
Well, I tell you, coming home was fantastic. I went 50 days without a shower. We got cleaned up. We got on these 747s. And they treated us like royalty. We had food, and we flew into Ireland and got off for a little bit, and then flew all night over to the United States. And I have to tell you, this memory is so clear in my mind. We came up coming into New York, and the pilot got on the radio, and he said, I radioed ahead, and LaGuardia has given you special permission for me to deviate from the flight plan. And he flew in low, and he dipped a wing, and there was a Statue of Liberty right there with the sun coming up. And he put a tape in, "I'm proud to be an American." And I have to tell you, some pretty tough Marines were shedding a tear. They were very happy to be home. And we got out of the plane to refresh a bit, and the crowds were waving flags. And we got back on, and we're stationed in 29 Palms. We flew across the United States, but the pilot said, "Look, I've got Chicago they know who you are. They know what you did. They're sending you Godspeed and welcome home." And we landed in March Air Force Base and cracked the hatch and put the U.S. flag out of the top. And crowds were waiting there for us. And the ride back to 29 Palms was people were on the road in a desert where I never saw people before. Pizza, beer. So it was very nice to come home. And there were victory parades. In a victory parade in Hollywood, which is surreal, but it was a nice feeling to come home. It was, in a way, what other veterans didn't receive in other wars. And I felt that and remembered that. But, I was tired, and I was, it was a short war, but I was tired. So I went to school for 2 years, Command and Staff College in Quantico as a major, to learn my craft as an infantry officer, and then the School of Advanced Warfighting, which is a campaign school where you learn to put the campaign studies together. And that was a very good school. Then I went to Special Operations in Tampa, Florida, to be member of the Special Operations Command. And I had to learn how to parachute at age 39 prior to going down there.
I'm 39. That's not so bad.
Well, the ground isn't any softer when you're 39 and you're surrounded by a bunch of young soldiers that I don't know. It was something else, but it was a good relationship in Special Operations that would later have a part to play with me after 9/11. I got to know the Special Operation Forces very well, the SEALs, the Green Berets, and the Air Commandos, and very few Marines in that command. But I was a staff officer, and I was an advisor, an aide to the Commander in Chief there, General Downing. It was a very good tour. And then from there, I went to my first command as a lieutenant colonel, and I was in charge of infantry training battalion at School of Infantry. So my job was to train infantry Marines in their skill and to qualify them. And that was a very good tour too. But it was applying the lessons I learned in Desert Storm to the young Marines, and just reflecting upon what's important in training and getting Marines prepared for combat.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get to that part too, because that comes into play largely. And one question I have over the course of that sort of decade was the first bombing of the World Trade Center in '93. Was there an inkling in the military at that time of like that this could get serious again? Like there's potential here for more conflict?
I think so. And I'm a veteran of Beirut also, but way back in '83. So I mean, the terrorist threat was always out there, but it wasn't the first and foremost. It wasn't like the primary threat. It wasn't something that we felt in our homeland. It was something far away, at an embassy or somewhere around the world. It wasn't here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to get into the actual sort of day of 9/11 now, and I want you to sort of walk us through where you were at and sort of what sort of transpired throughout the course of that day for you.
Well, I'm sure everybody has their memory of September 11th. Mine, I was stationed at the Pentagon, and the Pentagon is like a city. It's like 25,000 people work at the Pentagon, and as a colonel, I was assigned there as the deputy director for strategy and plans for the Marine Corps, and my job was to assist in all the planning for these contingency operations around the world. So my day started like, oh gee, I had this appointment I had to go to that day over at the Senate. My name popped up on the list to be interviewed to be the Senate liaison for the Marine Corps, which is, I don't know how that happened. I didn't want the job, but I had to take my uniform to work, and I had to go had an appointment at the Senate, and it was a Tuesday. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. It was a fall day, and at the Pentagon, I changed into my uniform, and I noticed outside of our office, I was on the fourth floor, B ring, room third corridor, room 37.
When you say B ring, is that in Pentagon? It's A, B, C, D.
Right. So
as
the
they
outer
go towards
ring,
the center.
Yeah, the outer ring is E, and then the A is all the way towards the inside.
Okay.
If you're assigned to the Pentagon, you've got to learn all this stuff, because you can say I got a meeting in 15 minutes, and if you don't know where you're going, you kind of have to find your way around the Pentagon, which is it's a big place.
Mm-hmm.
But so as I was in my office, I heard this commotion out there, and I went out, and there was the TV on, and we witnessed the first plane hit the towers there in New York City, and that gathered people around it. And I went to the phone to call over to the Senate liaison office, and I said, "You see what's going on?"
At this point, it was just the first plane, so
Yeah.
there was not really an inkling at that moment that it was a terrorist attack.
No, I think people were thinking maybe it's an aviation accident or something.
Mm-hmm.
But when as we continued to watch, and when that second plane came in, it was clear that something terrorist related was going on. But for me, I called over and I said, "Do you still want me to come over? Do you see what's going on TV?" They said, "Yes, come on over." So I had gone down.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Was there you had been deployed multiple times. You had seen combat. You see this happen live on TV. I was like in class, so I didn't see it until much later, sort of being replayed constantly on the news. Was there, and I want to go back to that sort of, you had sent that sense of fear in combat. Was there something different about maybe a sense of fear in that moment, in that?
No, it was more astonishment. It was more wondering what the heck was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, anybody at that point thought the Pentagon, I'm sure somebody thought it, but I did not think the Pentagon was a target, that there was a potential plane inbound to the Pentagon at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't think that. I was thinking, okay, I better make my appointment, you know.
Right.
And you could tell the people in the office were getting a little bit concerned as they were watching the TV. It became the center of focus. I excused myself and went down and caught the bus, and we had just probably cleared the Pentagon parking lot in the shuttle bus. The driver heard something crackle on the radio. He said, "Something is going on at the Pentagon." And he jammed on the brakes, and we all turned our head back, and we saw this massive flame and black smoke curling up over the Pentagon. And it was a sight that was unbelievable. You know, from the angle that I was looking back, it looked like a direct hit on the office I just left. In reality, it was just right around the corner, but I couldn't tell it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to call the office, no answer. I tried to call my wife, the phones weren't working. And
this picture, warn everyone that's it's a bit gruesome, but did you take this picture?
No, this is a stock photo. But you know, my office was just right around the corner from there. But in talking to the people that were in the office when the plane struck, what happened was the feeling was as if they got hit in the rear by a bumper car. They felt a thud. They felt this concussion. And at the window was this ball of flame that came right up to the window. And they felt this pressure. And from there, the enunciation came on, evacuate, evacuate. And from what I understand, of course, there was a lot of panic, a lot of concern. You know, people exited the building as fast as they could. There was mustering in the parking lot. People took charge and started to get a head count. At that point, they wanted to know who was in the building and who wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
There were Marines that wanted to go back into the building to help with the rescue, but they were turned back, of course, by the first responders. It was a very confusing and surreal experience for those people that were in the immediate vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you know, we proceeded on to the Senate building, and I did not know at that time, but the senators in that building were told to evacuate because they were told the next plane is coming in. And so I, you know, was proceeding. I was going to go in the door in there and meet up with the Marines. And in front of me was just one senator after another coming out. You know, it was like, I know that person. I've seen that person on TV. It was like unbelievable. You know, I was not looking where I was going, and this senator was not looking where she was going. But if he wanted to know where Hillary Clinton was at that time, she bumped right into me. We bumped, you know, we thudded pretty hard, and we were only inches away. And I looked at her, and there was fear. There was fear.
And you said that we had talked about this prior, that she, usually a senator would salute or say something noticing the uniform.
Right.
But obviously I think, you know, there were other things might've been on her mind that she, you know, was able to get out.
Yeah, I just took it as almost, you know, looking back on it, she was probably very scared, but she gave me a look that, you know, eyeball to eyeball. It wasn't something that I remembered as a pleasant encounter. It was more like I was in her way,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to get out of her way so she could get to the limousine was waiting for her. And I did turn around and look back, and she did look over at me, and the window went up, and I went into the building. And it was very quickly, we determined that we need to get out of there. We formed a carpool. I lived in Springfield, and we actually drove right by the Pentagon, and it was still, of course, burning. And you know, it was just blue sky and black smoke. And this is probably the hardest thing for me to talk about. But I lived in Springfield, and when I did get home, we lived in a cul-de-sac. There were other military families there. And when the Marine dropped me off, my wife Linda was there, and she ran over and, you know, a hug. She was trembling. And I looked over, and our neighbor, the Dickerson family, Paige, and the two children, Will and Beth, were sitting there on the stairs. And I was the last person, military, that got picked up, that got they got reunited with their family. They were left sitting there waiting for their dad. At that time, Major Jerry Dickerson.
You have a picture of him here.
Yeah.
And Jerry worked in that part of the Pentagon that was hit, right?
Yeah. And, you know, he and I talked about the Marine Corps Marathon. I'm a big runner, and I was giving him tips. This was going to be his first marathon, the Marine Corps Marathon. And, you know, I went down and spent time with Paige. I went in the house with him, and it was just, Sean, it was tough because she would get phone calls. We saw him, don't worry. He's probably here. He's probably there. Okay. But one call after another was just uncertain. And then I think finally, probably about 4:30 in the morning, she says, he's dead. I know it. He's dead. And he did perish. And for me, though, I had never spent that time with a military family and with kids where they slowly learned that their father, that their husband was not coming home. This is something that you don't expect when you go to the Pentagon to an office job, to be attacked by Al Qaeda right then and there. But you know, it was a personal loss that I felt in every bone in my body because of the kids and the wife. It was a tight family. Mm-hmm. The boy I don't think had many friends. He had thick glasses. His dad was his best friend. They'd go fishing together. They'd play ball together. And I did not know this, but when he found out his dad had died, he didn't say a word. It was a shock. He just clammed up. And I saw him, I think, a couple or 2 days later. And I said, you know, Will, your dad was a hero. And I want you always to remember what he did. And his lip quivered and a tear came to his eye. And he said, I love my dad. And his wife, Major Dickerson's wife, Paige, was astonished because she said, that's the first time he said something since I told him his dad had died. And, you know, the impact on the family was immense. The neighbors came together. We held candles. We went over to their house and offered prayer. But, you know, eventually they, just a couple of days later, my wife Linda was out there. And it took a while to recover his body. I think that he tried to go back in to save others. And it took a while to recover his body, but the notification team officially came out just as my wife Linda was out there talking to Paige, and the car pulled up, and you know, they were there to give the official notification. So, you know, 9/11 for me, 20 years ago, this memory is seared in my memory of the sacrifice of the service member, but also the family and the pain that's brought. And you know, I haven't been in touch with them, but I hope they're doing fine, and I hope they remember their dad, who was promoted to lieutenant colonel. I hope they remember him, what he was, as a true hero, you know, who sacrificed on that day. And there was 125 lives or 125 souls that were lost in the Pentagon that day, and he was one of them. And I just want everybody to remember his name, Jerry Dickerson, and look him up and just remember that, you know, put a name to this 9/11. And there's 3,000 names. There's stories that go on and on that we should not forget about. You know, we can't, you know.
You know, Brad, you told me that story the other day, and boy, it hit me hard.
You just can't. And, you know, my wife, Linda, went out and we went to his funeral, and we still have the program from his memorial service. And right on front is fallen, but not forgotten, mm-hmm. Fallen, but not forgotten. And, you know, after that happened, of course, you know, we're at war, and it was the beginning of a generation that doesn't know anything but war. Mm-hmm. You know, Al Qaeda was responsible, and, you know, for me, it was 12-hour days and focusing on the enemy and what we could do. But it was a start of a generation that was a benchmark. You know, I'm a baby boomer. You know, I remember in 4th grade, the assassination of President Kennedy. That was the one event. And every generation has something that marks that marks that generation. And from that comes feelings, comes purpose, comes mission, comes a lot of things. And that's really what I'm so excited to explore in your program, is how 9/11 not only affected the country, but how it affected the people, the
Definitely.
life, the families, and you couldn't buy a flag after 9/11. The country was so united. The patriotic, the sense of purpose, the enlistments, the country was unified, and it was beyond the country too. It was overseas or allies.
I want to touch on all of that. I do want to respect that Henry put his hand up, so I want to pop over to Henry real quick. I want to hear more about how your life changed on that day on 9/11, and I do have a great picture of you running that marathon that I'm going to show in a second. But Henry, if you could unmute, did you have a comment or a question? Oop.
Well, first of all, Brad, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story and for your service.
You're welcome.
But I was gonna say that last year, I wrote an essay. It was like a class assignment. I wrote an essay on the war against terrorism, and I wrote why I thought, obviously I'm not a veteran, and probably some people will disagree with me, but I wrote the essay on why I thought the war against terrorism was justified. And yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you.
Maybe we can get that essay from you, Henry. If you actually have an article in our VBC magazine, and maybe we could print something like that. I think we're going to have a Henry's Corner in the VBC magazine every month. But I want to let's see here. I want to get this picture of the marathon.
I'll just butt in and say I think we have at least a half dozen veterans who have served since September 11, 2001 on the Zoom side here. Some of them are the more seasoned, older veterans, and some of them are younger, but every one of them has a story.
Yes. I'm so excited to have you all join us, and I hope that you will come on to tell your story onto this program. As I said at the beginning, just so honored to hear these stories and really humbled by the courage it takes to tell these stories. I was saying before the program that in some way I feel the Vietnam veterans have had time to really think back on their service, come to us, they tell their stories, and not that that's not difficult, it still very much is. I feel like the 9/11 vets, there's still very much freshness in the last 20 years to this. And so, we obviously want to be sensitive here at VBC about the stories that, that you want to share. But if there is one that you're like, I really just want to get this out, we'd love to hear from you and bring you onto the program, definitely. Here is the picture. Brad, you had sent this to me, and it took me a second to actually see, the Pentagon in the background. Were you in this picture?
No, I couldn't because I was planning to run, but after 9/11, I have to tell you, I was working 12-hour days. I mean, I didn't have the time to do anything but go to work and come home. But the Marine Corps, marathon, they continued on, and this is the hole in the building. That hole was covered with a flag after the fires died, but this is the hole that people saw, and it was a grim reminder of the attack, but it was also something that really steeled the resolve of America. How could we be attacked? And it was something, I think, that the visual image drove people and instilled that, that to remain at peace, we're going to have to go to war. We're going to have to go to war. And, that was a defining moment for so many people, for our country too.
How did you see the military change over the course of that 48 hours?
It was purpose. It was resolve. I mean, it was like, no matter what had to be done, we did it, and for us in the Pentagon, our office was a crime scene. So we had to reestablish an office, another building, from staplers to recovering our, eventually going back to our office and recovering the top secret materials that were locked up in safes. And people evacuated so quickly. They left their wallet, they left their car keys, on their desk to evacuate. And eventually we were able to send people down to recover from the office. And our office had not received any real damage at all, maybe a little smoke. And it was kind of funny. I just bought a plant at the florist in the Pentagon because my office didn't have a window. And I paid like $40 for it. And so every time we sent somebody down to recover keys or something, I said, make sure you water my plant. And so that plant, a peace lily, it lived through the bombing, and it lived through the weeks and months of recovery. And, it was just a reminder that a peace lily was really symbolic that, that we would make it and we would do just fine,
And at what point during that day, I go back to, again, like Benghazi and being in the Gulf War, at what point during that day did you realize this is a massive attack on the United States? And did you have a sense of like, do you wanted to go back to conflict or go back to combat? I mean, or were you sort of done with that part of your career and you were ready to move on to training?
Well, I think whatever job you're in, you're committed to do the very best job you could. And for me, being part of strategy and plans for the Marine Corps and helping with the coordinate the plans was a very important job. Although, the infantry, the Marines wanted to do something more than just be at a headquarters and maybe suffer paper cuts or something. But we all had a job to do, and it was a very tense time. And I used to take the bus to work because the commuting can be kind of tough. But I drove in for a while, and I finally got back on the bus when things slowed down. The bus driver, when he saw me, he said, "Thank goodness," because I used to just say good morning to him in the morning. He says, "I thought you were killed. I haven't seen you for months." And it was just that nice feeling to get back into some type of routine after weeks of 12-hour days and scrambling and trying to sort all this stuff out and what the U.S. was going to do and what the Marine Corps was going to do in response to this.
At what point did you start training? I'm guessing this was sort of office work, and then you transitioned to actually training Marines, right?
Well, I after that, I had got an assignment overseas in Europe, where I was the plans officer for Marine Forces Europe. And we were in Stuttgart, Germany, but my job was a liaison with the Dutch, with the British, with the Polish to start training together in this world, in this war against terrorism. And what was really, it was really different is the Russians actually came to Stuttgart, Germany, and we interacted with the Spetsnaz and their special forces to talk about how we could train together. It was just that environment of that unification, United States and the world. I mean, we were in it together. It was a special time, and I wish we could get back there in a lot of ways. And from Germany, just a year, and they called me back to the United States to run the School of Infantry at Camp Lejeune, and my job was to provide entry-level training and advanced skill training to Marines on the East Coast who were going to go into combat typically within a year. And what I noticed was these are 18, 19-year-old Marines, and the resolve, their sense of purpose. I mean, they were laser focused, and it was a time that I felt like I could give back to the young Marines in training and pass on some of the things that I learned. But we had instructors there that wanted to get into combat too, and I wrote down their names. Captain Todd Siebert was a company commander who went back to Iraq and was killed. And Captain Phil Dykeman went to Todd Siebert's funeral, and he was later killed less than a year later. And a Sergeant Major Joe Ellis, just a picture perfect Marine, volunteered to go back, and he was killed. So at the School of Infantry, they kept a wooden cross with dog tags of all the Marines that were killed. And it was sad to say that cross filled up with more dog tags than you would ever want to see. It was just
This was between like 2001, 2003.
Yeah. I mean, I was the CO from 2003 to 2005.
Okay.
So, at that time we were in full tilt, and there were casualties being taken quite heavily. And but that's where I retired from, 29 years as an infantry officer. And I felt good about the quality of the Marines we had and the quality of the training and their commitment to this war on terrorism, which we're still at it. You know, it's a period of long wars, and I think long wars, you know, there's a heavy price to pay, and we'll hear about that, I'm sure.
I do. I know. I want to talk about that. You were kind of a father figure then, in a way, to these Marines at Camp Lejeune.
Yeah.
What was that like, being a Marine, going this long career, and then now you're kind of training them, and be honest, you had a favorite.
Yeah.
But how was it like being sort of like this, you oversaw this training and you knew that they were going to go into combat, sending them into danger, how did that play out in your head?
Well, I took the job very, very seriously, just like all the Marines. And I made a purpose to meet the families of the Marines when they brought them to Camp Lejeune. After boot leave, they would bring them to Camp Geiger, and I would make a point to meet as many parents as I could. And it was a saying a goodbye, parents, to their loved one Marine, and it was passing the baton. They did everything they could as parents for their child, but they were now passing the responsibility to me and my Marines to train them for combat. So a lot of time in the field, a lot of time with weapons, but a lot of time those people wearing that white stripe on their helmet were the combat instructors. And there's 3 Marines that are influential in a Marine's life: the recruiter, the drill instructor, and the combat instructor. And a lot of them are combat veterans that pass on their lessons and their training to these young Marines. And it was just so rewarding to get in the Humvee and go to the field and interact with these young Marines and just talk to them, to ask them why they joined and why they wanted to be a Marine. And the wave of patriotism and commitment and resolve, went right to these Marines, 18, 19 years old, doing very hard things.
What was the one, maybe if you have a top 3 or the top thing that you wanted to impart to the new Marines?
Listen to their NCOs. I mean, listen to their sergeants, and always learn. Just don't take anything for granted. Protect yourself and protect your Marines. Know your job. But listen to your NCOs. They know how to teach. They know how to lead. So follow and learn. Never stop learning.
Mm-hmm. I want to share this picture, and I'm not quite sure what's going on in this picture.
That's my retirement. That's the General Amos, who later became the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and that's on the parade deck at Camp Geiger. And that's me retiring after 29 years and getting the Legion of Merit, and moving on to another phase of my life. And that was in 2005.
What was it like that day?
It was in a way, it was very nice. Behind me was the whole battalion of Marines, weapons and trucks and things like that. And, at that point, I knew that my job was done. I had done the best I could, and it was time to move on and pass the baton to other Marines. But it was a great career, and, it wasn't perfect, but it was certainly rewarding in every aspect. And I survived it, and my family survived it, and it's really the bedrock of a lot of values and things that I hold dearly, and that's why I value this show so much. When I stumbled on it, it's just a way for veterans to come together, and I'm sure this is going to come out in 9/11. But the 9/11 veterans that I've seen really need a sense of purpose. They need a sense of belonging. They want to serve. They want a commitment. They want a purpose in it, and I think we can find out about these things and we can share it. And give them an opportunity to tell their side of the story, which I'm in awe of Generation 9/11, all that they've gone through, all that they've had to be thrust into in this very chaotic world. They, I salute all of them. That I'm in awe of what they're doing and what they've done.
When you were retiring, was there a piece of you that wanted to stay? And a follow up to that is, did you feel like your mission was complete?
Yeah, I mean, I was ready to go, it was done. I mean, it was like one of the things that you just know that the mission was accomplished. The Marines were in good shape, and life doesn't get any easier the higher up you go in rank, and the more responsibility you have. It's all very rewarding, but at some point, it's time to turn it over to somebody else.
And to the point of the post 9/11 generation, do you have a sense of what you think sort of the defining trauma of this generation is, or have we even seen it yet? Is it the multiple deployments? Is it the long deployments?
I think percentage wise, this generation, if you're in the military, you have a higher percentage of going to combat. You have a higher percentage of trauma, physically, mentally. You have a higher, I think, family impact. I mean, it's the whole military experience on steroids. I mean, it's just been so powerful to have all these entities of military service on this one generation, and I don't know whether it's ever been in the history of the United States like this, where we've asked so much of so few, in the U.S. population to carry this burden, and, as the long wars go on, I don't know whether the gap is getting bigger between the civilians and the military or what, but it's people like you and Todd and everybody here to kind of close that gap as best as we can with stories, with allowing people to connect,
I'm a firm believer in the power of storytelling. My background being in performance art, I really believe that it brings us all together in many ways. It bridges a lot of gaps. And the last question I have for you is, can you, in reflecting on your service, the years of service that you had, was there a defining moment for you? That's a big question.
No, I think every duty station, every experience has something to it. But I think for an infantryman, I think it's your first time in combat. I mean, you're really put to test, and it's how you respond, how you react. And those moments are embedded in your memory, and you're just glad that you did your job and you took care of your Marines and came through it. All the years of paperwork and presentations, and it's all great, but those times that you don't really want to go to war, but when you're put in that position and you perform as expected and you do the mission and you don't let your Marines down, I think for me, Desert Storm was probably it.
Thank you. I do want to open it up to our room here. And thank you, Brad, so much for all of this. But if there's points in the story that anybody had any questions about or thoughts on, I kind of wanted to open it up and see if anyone wanted to chime in and ask Brad a question, or if they want to answer any of the questions that I asked. I know
Sean.
Bob thank you.
Hey, Sean, one thing, I think my sister's in the audience. Laurie Blair is out there somewhere. So if she feels like saying how it is on families and whatnot, but she's in Cleveland. If she's out there, Laurie, speak up. If not,
hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Laurie.
I'm here. Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm actually taking care of my grandson at the moment, so he's 2 years old, and I listened to Brad the entire time. I gave him a bath. I was getting chills. I've always been so proud of Brad. It's always been hard to watch your brother be stationed here, there, and everywhere and in danger. But I tell you what, he set a good example for the rest of our family. It's hard. Life can throw you challenges, and you need somebody to look up to. And what a great big brother. I'm very proud of you. But he didn't tell you what happened when he jumped out of the plane. You didn't tell, or the parachute drop in Georgia. You didn't finish the story.
Well, that's another story. That's another story. That's
all right. So we'll talk about that another time.
Anytime there's a story about a parachute drop, it's not a good story.
Well, it really wasn't. It really wasn't. But anyway, just another example of how proud I am, because he just kind of got up and put it behind him and keep on going. So. But yeah, one of my favorite stories, Brad tells me, he gets so upset. I won't tell the story, but I'm so proud of his service. When we get together for Thanksgiving, I'll say, come on, tell another story, tell a new story, tell that other one that you said. And I just love learning about his experiences, because when you live so far away from each other and see each other once a year or twice a year, it's hard to really understand. And this hour has been amazing. I've learned so much about you, Brad, and your experiences that I didn't know.
Okay. Okay, Lori, love you. Thank you.
Love you. And all of you veterans, thank you for your service. Everybody on the call, I mean it. I'm getting chills. This is just amazing. So thank you very much for everybody's service.
And you're doing it all while watching a 2-year-old and bathing a 2-year-old. So, I mean,
yeah,
I have a 13-month-old upstairs and I can't brush my teeth and walk at the same time. So
yeah, he's a good one.
Thank you for joining us for Brad's story. I want to highlight a comment that I just saw pop in here that gives us some context. Between 1950 and 91, the Guard and the Reserve were called up about 13 times in that 41-year period. Between 91 and now, the call-ups exceed 200. And that's the perspective to keep in mind in support of Brad's comment about how service has changed. Also, Ben Rodriguez, Baltimore. I'll call you Baltimore, Ben. In my opinion, I'd rather serve next to someone who volunteered to be there. There's a lot of positive things we can learn from the service, but it's not for everyone. And I know that we also, Bob Mizwa, you connected with me. I was so happy that you did. That you were. I wanted to ask you sort of what happened with you on that day on 9/11, because you were in the service as well. So I didn't know how your service had changed. I thought I'd ask you as well tonight.
Just to give you some background, I was 4 years ROTC at W&J, and then I served a year in the States, here in Vietnam, and then I was obligated for 4 years in the Army Reserves, active reserves. So I stayed in. I worked my way up to major in the middle of the 80s, and I came to the old Crossroads. I had 3 courses of my command general staff college done, and I'm there at the Crossroads. Do I get to know my kids, or do I go on to become a lieutenant colonel? I chose my kids for about 13 or 14 years. Got back in 2001, and lo and behold, my civilian job, I was an insurance adjuster. I will never forget that day, because I hit the office in Castle Shannon, went on to my first appointment in Crafton. And I'm sitting there talking to our insured, and she had the television on, and whammo, what the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. And we're both glued at the television. And then I said, hey, I got to go to my next appointment. I'm in my car. I get the Aliquippa, my cell phone goes off, one of them old bag phones back then. Here it's my commanding officer. Hey, you're on alert now. We may be calling you tomorrow. And get ready. The balloon's going up. So we kicked into gear. I mean, we were all, and it's crazy because somehow I got routed into the JAG. I mean, I was assigned to the JAG at the 99th Reserve Readiness Command up in Moon Township. We first were to Oakdale here, where I lived for 2 months. They moved us up to the new headquarters up there in Moon Township. And then several months later, I get notice I'm being transferred to the 458th Combat Engineers in Johnstown. And I had 3 days to clean up my affairs, and up to Johnstown, then to Fort McCoy for training. Don't ask me why they sent us to McCoy to train for the desert, because it was the worst winter they'd ever had in 10 years. And then, they sent us to Kuwait, and we spent all of 2004 in Iraq, and then I got hurt over there, and so they held me over on some medical thing through April of 2005, when I finally said, hey, I want to go back home. I'm going back home hurt. And they said, okay, the VA can take care of you. And I must admit, the VA has been good to me. I've gotten very good service from the VA. There are a few minor complaints, but that's life. Yeah. Nothing's perfect in life, and so and I had a rear job at Camp Victory. I was in the S4 section, and they just said, forget about your job in here. You're now the mayor of the brigade area. And I literally was in charge of the whole engineer brigade. And it was crazy because I was doing things like, supervising maintenance people, coordinating with KBR, and just to
ABR?
give you that, Kellogg Brown and Root, the wholly owned subsidiary of Halliburton. And just to give you an example, like we had trouble with like water in the whole camp because what they did is they ordered shower heads for all the showers throughout the whole camp based on, how should I say, oh, there's an unlimited supply of water. And so one of the first things I did, my father-in-law owned the supply company. I called Max up. I was able to do it. I said, send me, I forgot how many hundreds of shower heads, which cut our water usage in half. And once the brigade commander and the commanding general found out about it, they, it's like, hey, can you get more of these? We got it. Because ours was the only brigade area not running out of water. I remember walking around the area at night, all of a sudden these young ladies from the MP battalion across the road are sneaking in our area. What are you girls doing here? And it's like they're looking at me and it's like, well, we don't have any water. We wanted to come over and take a shower and okay. And I remember talking to their commanding officer. She was a West Point captain. And, I said, you want me to get you some shower heads? And it just simple, stupid little things like, that, but just, it was crazy because, I did so little in my MOS and I'm doing all this other stuff. It was more administrative and logistic.
Yeah.
And I remember I got one of the coins from the brigade commander. He says, hey, that shower head was a great idea. But then KBR was a little pissed off at me because they finally came in and said, okay, we're bringing in the shower heads. But like all the ones my father-in-law sent to me, they ran, I think, $1.30 a piece at his cost. And I said, hey, Max, when do you want me to send a check to you? And he said, you don't send me anything. That's my gift to your battalion and brigade. And he was a World War II veteran, and
They didn't have
Henry,
shower heads back
I
then.
see Henry has a question.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, Henry, I want to pop over to you.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to show you something that I have. I don't know if you can see it, but this is the picture of Bush with the firefighter in 9/11, and I got it signed by the firefighter.
Oh, wow. How did you track him down?
I find people.
Henry Shupke, I find people. There's your tagline, buddy.
If you need to find somebody, consult Henry, Madison, Wisconsin.
I
Sure.
also got the photographer of this photo.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's the very famous
That
photograph.
is so cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Henry.
And Bob, I love that showerhead story. It's like little things become so important in war. Life boils down to the essentials. Do I have water? Do I have food? Do I have shelter? How do I stay safe? Do I have something to put on my feet? Ken Rizicki.
Yeah. Hey, I have a story about getting back to 9/11. As you recall, the pilots were trained somewhere down in Florida. And my parents used to winter over in Florida. They had a little apartment. They were on the ground floor of a 2-story building. Above them was a Middle Eastern guy who was not very friendly. He never talked to them, never made eye contact. And my parents started getting these outrageous phone bills with a lot of long distance calls on them. And they called the phone company and they sent one technician after another out there, and they couldn't find anything wrong with the lines. So finally, they were about to sell the apartment and they had a technician out, and he said, you guys, you look like honest people. I don't think you're trying to bamboozle the phone company. So he went back out. There was like a little outbuilding where all the phone lines came together. And he traced the line from that Middle Eastern guy up on the second floor. He said, my God, he said, I never saw anything like it. That guy was really clever. You didn't make those calls. He did, but he was gone by then. And my mother said to me, do you think he had anything to do with those pilots, like getting the money to pay for their training or anything? I said, you know, it might just be a coincidence, but you might be onto something.
So crazy. There's so many threads in all of this, and I've done a lot of research looking into what is leading up to 9/11. That's what I'm going to touch on next week in our timeline section, is sort of the connection between 9/11 and the Gulf War, and sort of the pieces that we missed going into 9/11 before we start looking at the week after, how the U.S. responded. But so many people's lives were touched in some odd way during that time, that it's incredible. It's incredible to hear it in a documentary about all these things that were happening at random, it seemed, but crazier things have happened. So who knows? It's I guess it's possible, Ken. One thing I do want to ask the group and everybody here is, I assume that a veteran witnessed 9/11 in a different way than civilians did, and they watched their civilian family and friends react to this attack in different ways than they probably did. Brad, you had mentioned something at the beginning about, like, you know, your training is what you rely on when you're in combat, when you're in these situations. Do you think that that is sort of what veterans may have relied on that day? You know, hunker down, get it done. And did you see your civilian friends and family reacting, and how did you help them through that day?
Well, you know, from what I saw and heard, it was a lot of people reacted instinctively, whether it was those service members that wanted to go back into a burning building to pull out their fellow service members. You know, and that's really where the true character and nature of a person comes out under extreme danger like that. And that was one thing that stuck with me about how they would completely disregard their own safety to go back into a building that was on fire, although they were prevented from going back. But I think when something like that happens, of course, there's individual responses, but I think it's really a call to action. I think it's it's like sounding the alarm. I mean, you start going through the mental preparations, and you focus on your job, whatever your job is, and every job is important in the military. I think you find this renewed commitment to do your very best at what you have to do to accomplish the mission. You know, and as time goes on, you have people that want to get into combat, get to the front lines, and I mean that's true. But everybody can't be there and should not be there. We talked about the important role of supporting the supporting agencies and others that aren't in direct combat, and they're all very important. So I think when you have something like that, you want to roll up your sleeves and start swinging, and get into the fight in whatever capacity you can. I mean, it's what the military is there for, is to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And this was an attack right in our homeland. So it stung, it hurt. Right.
Hey, Brad.
Sure.
I remember back in the early 80s when they started training on the One Army concept, and they drilled it into our heads in the reserves. When the balloon goes up, you're either going to be gone in 24 hours or less.
Yeah.
And they kept emphasizing that to us in reserves. 50% of the support troops are in the reserves. And so when we get involved in these conflicts, if you're in reserves, you better be ready to go. And, I mean, we trained as if we were on active duty. It got to the point by the mid 80s. There was no more of this, hey, you're going to be 30 or 40% as good as an active duty soldier. No, our expectations are you are going to be ready to go. And boy, it paid off in the long run, I think. It really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they ground that into us. Holy mackerel. I mean, I remember telling my wife, when she was alive, I said, hey, hon, when I go back on in a reserves, they can call me up anytime they want. Boy, they sure as hell did.
Yeah.
It when I told her a year later, I was living what I told her.
Yeah. And there was a lot of comments, a lot of great discussion here in the chat today. I'm not sure about the Facebook side, Todd. I wanted to pitch to you here if there's anything you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I mean, John Hawes here. Hello, John. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. I was
Hi, John.
hoping you'd join us sometime. And Ehab, I want to say hello to Ehab. These
Ehab,
are
nice to
two
see you.
veterans we are absolutely going to spotlight in future episodes. They're fascinating people with fascinating stories. And John just said he was a senior in high school in 9/11 and already contracted with the Army. And the recruiter for delayed entry, and the recruiter called him and said, "Hey, kid, you still want to go in?" And he said, "Hell yeah." But I wonder, what did your parents say? Did they have any reservations, or didn't they care, John?
My parents definitely had the reservations, but they knew it was something I wanted to do for a long time. So I had their full support. Were they more nervous at that point than ever before? Absolutely. But they never wavered in their commitment. I never wavered. But I'll never forget, I was kind of shocked by the recruiter, calling me up. I don't remember, it was 2 or 3 days after the attack, asking me if it was something I still wanted to do, because they had a run on recruits backing out, because after such a long period of peace, people that were signing up for the college money or whatever their reasons were, war seemed imminent, and these contracted recruits were backing out, and there was nothing the recruiters can really do as long as they hadn't shipped off to basic training yet.
It's just so cool that we have stories from, people like John who are in high school, David Seaver, who's with us. He was an old man and decided he wanted to join. I mean, it's so striking to me how, Dave, you joined, you were,
Dave,
were
you're
you
a
in
dentist,
your
right?
40s?
I was 43 when I went in.
43 when you joined.
But let me just say, old age and treachery overcome youth and skill.
Hey, Todd, there were 7 of us Vietnam veterans in my battalion.
That amazes me.
That one picture I sent you, you'll see the picture of all the Vietnam veterans there. I mean,
that's something I really do want to touch on eventually as well.
I put it in the chat that we're. I should not say this, but I put in the chat that we're going to have the old guy, people who are like Dave and Bob and Jimmy Jones. I mean, their careers span Vietnam to post 9/11. It's just amazing to me. They were the senior people in the military, and I find that fascinating.
Baltimore Ben, I'd like to highlight you as well. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully we get to highlight your story as well.
Jeez, Jimmy Jones was 57 when he was sent to Texas in 2004.
I wanted to have. I'm going to ask Julia next episode. Julia Parsons. We're going to be holding a 100th birthday for her March 4th,
March 2nd, Tuesday, March 2nd. Now listen, Julia's with us, right? Julia's on here.
She just stepped away, it seems.
Oh, she stepped away. Good, good, because we were talking a lot about her today and planning her birthday party. We're going to do a parade in front of her house. We're going to get the police and fire department. She was a Navy wave in World War II and did really important work. She's turning 100 years old on March 2nd. And we want to, there she is. Hey, Julia, we're just talking about you. And so we're going to have, and then we're going to have a show that will really just be a birthday celebration of Julia and have her, answer any questions that we might have about her life. 100 years, just amazing. Just I look forward to it. So we're going to plan something very special.
Yeah. Well, I want to respect everyone's time tonight. Larry, did you have something to say before we head out? We got you muted. Let's unmute you.
Hey, Larry Gamrett. Good to see you, Larry.
Larry, you can play us out.
Larry's the kind of guy who would have joined up after 9/11 for sure.
We still can't hear you, Larry.
Can't hear you, Larry. Unfortunately, we can't hear what you're saying, Larry. But
send us an email.
Yeah, no, we'll see you Monday night. We'll see you
Yes.
Monday night.
Oh,
all right.
there we
there
go.
you are.
There you are.
You hear me
Larry, go
now?
ahead. We can.
All right. General Schwarzkopf was told by the President of the United States during the Desert Storm War that was the war that he was to win because he was a Vietnam general. All right. And then everybody, that was the war we lost. He wanted them to win that war. I think it was the 100-hour war, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
it was.
And he said that was the blessing. The younger guys that went in there did it in 100 hours, and that was the victory for us in Vietnam. And this comes from the President of the United States.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. And thank you, everybody, for coming on tonight. Brad, thank you for your courage to come on and talk about your story through 9/11. I hope you guys join us Monday night, Wednesday morning. We'll be back here next Thursday night for Generation 9/11 once again. And I hope you all have a very safe and happy weekend. Ellie, you want to play us out?
Semper Fi, Brad. Semper Fi, Baltimore, Ben.
Bye. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Todd.
Love it.